Hello, AP Lang. How are you guys today? I hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to follow up with what you did yesterday, and we're going to move from looking at the prompt and getting some direction into reading and analyzing the passage. Okay, so some review from yesterday. You guys looked at the prompt for Madeline Albright and you filled out that soapstone. So I'm going to kind of go over that with you, and I'll be checking yours out in Google Classroom too. So here is what I came up with. Now remember, the idea was if you obviously soapstone for just such a small 2 or 3 sentences is kind of pushing it, but I was shocked by how much this came full circle once I did this soapstone and then I read the actual passage. I thought, wow, it really did kind of give me a hint for what was to come. Okay, so for speaker, I had Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. I think that's significant because she holds a place of power. It's a woman, some important things. The occasion was a graduation. It was in 1997 at Holyoke. The audience is female graduates. And the purpose that I pulled from that prompt was to convey, and I think it actually uses those exact words, the idea that perseverance can make a difference. So my purpose was kind of like the subject. Also, I just took the subject a step farther. And then tone. So tone is very tricky when you're looking at a prompt. So what I was thinking about was any graduation speech I've ever been to, and what's usually the purpose, whether it was high school, college, probably in some way even like a kindergarten or a preschool graduation. There is usually a tone that the speaker is going for. They're there to acknowledge the people who are graduating. They're there to motivate the people who are graduating, but also the people in the crowd, and to inspire. So we can't be 100% sure exactly how Albright does that, but we know that usually that's the point of a graduation speech. So those are kind of like our hints. When you're doing this, I would not take more than 3 or 4 minutes to evaluate the prompt. Otherwise, you're going to bog yourself down. So it's good if you can do it quickly and kind of give yourself a preview for what is to come. Okay, so now we're going to switch to attacking the passage. So these are the tips, and we have gone over these in some way in class, but I'm just going to refresh. So when you're looking at the passage, I would not take any more than like 7 minutes to read and take notes on the passage, because you want at least like 35 to write. And the way I see it is that when you're writing, it's not like you're ignoring the passage. You're still going back to it. And if you've done a good job with taking notes and underlining key things and all of that, although we'll talk about that because that's going to be a little bit different since you're taking it online, you will be able to do that quickly. So I would shoot for 7 to 10 minutes when you're probably not 10, probably just 7 minutes when you're just looking at the passage. Okay, so you want to write down the main idea in the margins, underline or write out key lines. So like I tried to put myself in the position of somebody taking this AP Lang test online. So I did not have I couldn't use the passage because you guys will have the passage pulled up on your screen, so I couldn't take notes in it. So I wrote down key lines. I just made notes of where I thought the shifts were. So we're gonna talk about how you're gonna have to make that your own a little bit. So underline or just take notes of key lines. Kind of look over those key lines, like what's the point of them, what makes them important. Number 4, look at the rhetoric. What situation is she creating? This is where you're going to get more technical with, like, was there ethos? Did you notice parallelism? Was there a pronoun change? And those are going to lead you to the shifts and allow you to chunk the passage into like a beginning, middle, and end. So that is important because you want it to remember be like a walk through the essay. You are not just writing about the beginning or the end. There are going to be great things at the end. There always are great things at the end, but you have to show that you've seen how the speaker has developed the message. So that's why I suggest a beginning, middle, and end, and then picking one thing in each of those that you want to focus on in order to develop the idea. So some tips: you can look for pronoun changes, a difference in tone, a change of subject, a shift in the attitude of the author. So did the author start out real satirical at the beginning, but then all of a sudden at the end it's inspirational? Like there's a point that the speaker did that. Some of these changes you can literally see, like, oh wow, they used I throughout the entire speech, but now they switched to we. Why would somebody do that? So you can literally see that the pronoun has changed. So if you're finding that you have trouble, look for some of those things that are legitimately just visible compared to like a nuance or a subtle change. And that can always be a place to start. By no means should you only look for pronouns. It's just always my kind of like, hey, think about those pronouns and what they were telling us. Okay, so you are going to take these notes and you're going to apply them to your own passage for some practice. So in Google Classroom, you are going to open the document titled 4-8 Prompt for Practice. So just like I said a little bit ago, you are not going to be able to edit this doc. I thought about changing it so that you guys could make your annotations on it, but instead I decided let's make it what the test is going to be actually like. So for today, you're going to have to find a different way to take notes. I just had a piece of loose leaf and like I said, wrote down lines 30 or shift 1 or whatever it was. And then I moved them to the slide. So you guys will see my notes here in a little bit. But you want to find a way to take notes that make sense for you. But when you do this, don't take too much more than 7 minutes to just read and annotate, thinking about like what's the point? Did you see beginning, middle, and end chunks? Were there any devices that really stuck out to you? So if you go ahead and pause the video, and then once you have read through it and made your annotations, come back and we will chat about what was going on. So hopefully you've had some time to read and annotate. You know, I understand that I cannot literally watch you do that or make sure you take the time, but all I can say is it's going to benefit you to practice. So, you know, just give yourself that opportunity to get some good practice in rather than just, you know, zipping through this and looking through my notes. Okay, so I'm going to switch back from the actual document. So I'll apologize in advance for any kind of like motion sickness you might get from me doing this. Okay, so I read through once, and then I took note of key lines. I thought the beginning lines were really important. So I'll try to pull them up here in a second. It's not letting me scroll. Okay, so anyway, I thought the first few lines were important. There we go. As individuals, each of us must choose whether to live our lives narrowly, selfishly, and complacently, or to act with courage and faith. I think she sets the stage right there. Some of that connects to the perseverance that we mentioned yesterday, and that it eventually became part of what we felt like was the purpose, or I know that I felt was the purpose when I looked at the prompt. So I thought that that was a key line. Then we went to 40 through 44. Instead, women everywhere, whether bumping against a glass ceiling or rising from a dirt floor, standing up, spreading the word that we are ready to claim our rightful place as full citizens and full participants in every society on earth. 64 through 66, I'm actually not going to go back and read any of them, but you can kind of compare them to what you have written. 72 through 74, and probably what I thought was just some of my favorite lines were 98 through 107 there at the end. So honestly, based on those things, I was able to combine that where I felt like there were some rhetorical shifts, and I chunked it into a beginning, middle, and end. So I felt the beginning was line 1 through 30. And honestly, I just felt by when she gets into line, let's say line 30 right here, she switches to, we have built this economy, and then even into like 35 and on, she starts talking about like the advances of women. So it seemed like before that, she was kind of giving these specific examples, and now she has made a switch. And she goes on further to just use more examples of what the women have done. So I think like right around 30, 35, that's where that switch to the middle of the passage becomes. Now, don't worry if yours isn't exactly the same as mine. It might not be, and that doesn't mean anybody did anything wrong. You just have to be able to back up why you made that switch. Okay, and then my final shift, okay, was after I talk about the beginning, middle, and end, I'll kind of talk about specific rhetorical choices that I found within each of those. And like I said, maybe yours are similar, maybe they're a little bit different. You're going to obviously play to your own strengths a little bit. And while you're taking notes, if you take note of more than one, that's totally okay, but you're just going to want to pick the strongest one within each of those 3 sections. So then I thought 71 was where there was another switch, and that is one of those obvious. All of a sudden, she starts saying you. As you go along your own road in life, you will, if you aim high enough, also meet resistance. So now all of a sudden, she is speaking directly to her audience. So that is one of those obvious pronoun switches. Okay, so within the beginning, I felt a rhetorical choice that stood out to me was just her use of examples. She talks about the Berlin Wall, NATO, Bosnia. So those were some specific examples. So maybe she was appealing to some logic there by giving you those facts. In the middle, she says bumping into a glass ceiling or rising from a dirt floor. So first of all, that is very figurative, but also it shows us how she's including all kinds of women and reaching out to a huge group. It is not one specific kind. It is people who feel like they want to push the limits. It's people who have come from nothing, and maybe even are still living in that situation, but she wants to include all of those people. And in the end, like I said earlier, that's where you saw that use of the pronoun you. It's also where she goes into her call of action, which is what she wants her listeners to do. It's often a great place to look for that big overall purpose, and then you can kind of see how all of these other things have fit in. Okay, so hopefully you can compare that to what you did. If you want to take a picture of your notes and send them to me if you have any questions, that's great. You can do that through Remind. You can also send me an email. I'll be happy to talk through those. That's what kind of stinks about this is I want to give you guys like the freedom to do things at your own pace, but then that means you don't always get that instant back and forth communication, which I know I'm really missing. So please, email me or reach out to me if you want me to check out yours specifically. So for your homework, you're going to evaluate a cold prompt and passage. So I'm sure you guys have heard of like a cold passage before, and that just means like it's one you've never seen. So the same thing is going to be true for the actual exam or any final exam that you take. Usually in any class, you're looking at a cold prompt. It needs to be, hey, I took all of these skills and now I applied them to a new piece. So that's what you're doing. So in Google Classroom, you will find a document titled Thatcher Prompt and Passage Eval. Start by evaluating the prompt with the soapstone chart and then analyze the passage using the techniques we discussed today. Try to do both of these things in 10 minutes. So obviously you got to do what you need to do. If you're doing 10 minutes and you spend 5 of it just like being anxious or something, then that's not okay. Give yourself more time. But you have to consider that you don't want to use too much of your time on the prompt and on the reading because you need the time to write and you can always revisit the text as needed. So that will be your homework. That's all uploaded in Google Classroom with all of the due dates and everything that you need. So check that out. And then just like always, let me know if you guys have any questions about anything. I will be happy to help. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.